What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
The morning sun beat down on my wool uniform as I adjusted the replica Enfield rifle in my hands. Another July day at Gettysburg. Another reenactment. I'd been doing this for 15 years. But something felt different today. Maybe it was the unusual number of emergency vehicles I'd seen on the drive-in. Or maybe it was just the heavy humidity making everyone irritable. "Joseph! Get your boys in position!" Marcus, our unit coordinator, shouted from his position near the tree line. I raised my hand in acknowledgement and turned to the dozen men behind me, all dressed in our Confederate gray. We were supposed to be a part of Pickett's charge today, one of the most famous failed assaults in military history. If only we knew what kind of charge we'd really be facing. The first sign that something was wrong came when Tom, one of our Union counterparts, broke formation and started running toward their own lines. Even from 200 yards away, I could see something was off about his gait. Their commander tried to stop him, but Tom just bit him. The sound of the scream carried across the field. "What the hell?" Bradley, my second in command, muttered beside me. "That's not in the script." More screams erupted from the Union lines. Real screams, not the theatrical kind we usually heard during these events. Then I saw it. Tom's victim was getting back up, but something was wrong. His movements were jerky, unnatural, and he was charging toward his own men with his mouth open wide. "Everyone back!" I shouted, breaking character. "This isn't part of the show." Some of my men looked confused, but years of drilling had taught them to follow orders. We began retreating toward the tree line just as chaos erupted across the battlefield. Hundreds of spectators were running from the viewing areas, and I could hear police sirens in the distance. "Your phone working?" I asked Bradley as we jogged backward, keeping our eyes on the growing disorder in the Union lines. "No service," he replied, pulling it from his period-inappropriate pocket. "Just emergency alerts, but they won't load." The situation deteriorated rapidly. What started as 2 infected reenactors became 20 within minutes. They moved with a horrifying speed that no zombie movie had prepared us for. Those of us who made it to the tree line had a choice to make. Head for the parking lot with the fleeing crowds, or make our way to the equipment depot where we stored our real camping gear. "Listen up!" I gathered my remaining men. Only 8 now. The parking lot's going to be a death trap. We've got supplies at the depot, and we know this ground better than most. That's where we're heading. "Those are real zombies, aren't they?" young Jimmy asked, his voice cracking. He couldn't have been more than 19. "Sure looks that way," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And we're dressed like soldiers. So let's be soldiers." We moved through the woods in formation, just like we'd practiced hundreds of times, but now with real purpose. Our replica rifles made decent clubs, and the heavy wool uniforms could prevent bites if we were lucky. As we approached the depot, we could hear the sounds of fighting, both gunshots and screams. The depot was a modern building despite its rustic exterior, and it had one thing we desperately needed: a radio. If we could contact emergency services, maybe we could figure out how widespread this was. But as we emerged from the tree line, we saw Mark, the depot manager, struggling with what used to be Sarah from the medical tent. Bradley moved to help, but I held him back. We watched in horror as Mark went down, Sarah's teeth tearing into his throat. Behind them, the depot door stood open, our supplies tantalizingly close. "New plan," I whispered, gathering my men close. "We're going to have to run for it. Grab what you can carry. Focus on water, real weapons if you can find them, and food. Don't stop for anything else." I looked at each of their faces: Bradley, Jimmy, Derek, Alan, Chris, Peter, Robert, and Sam. In our gray uniforms, we looked like ghosts from another war, about to fight a battle that no one could have prepared for. "Ready?" I asked, gripping my rifle tight. They nodded. Go! We sprinted for the depot, and that's when everything went to hell. The 20 yards to the depot entrance felt like the longest charge of my life. Sarah's head snapped up at our approach, her face smeared with Mark's blood. She was fast, much faster than we expected, but we had momentum on our side. Chris hit her first, swinging his rifle like a baseball bat. The brass-fitted stock connected with her jaw with a sickening crack, sending her sprawling. Inside! Now! I shouted, pushing Jimmy through the doorway first. The rest of my men poured in behind him while I brought up the rear. Bradley and Derek slammed the door shut, and Peter dragged a metal storage cabinet across it. Sam, Robert, check the back door. Alan, windows. The men moved with practiced precision, our years of drilling finally serving a real purpose. I heard the crash of more furniture being moved, followed by Sam's clear from the back. The depot was a large single-room building about 40 feet square, filled with storage racks and boxes of reenactment supplies. More importantly, it contained our personal gear, modern camping equipment, and the emergency supplies required by the event organizers. Jesus Christ, Jimmy whispered, staring at his shaking hands. We just killed Sarah. She was already dead, Bradley said firmly, putting a hand on the kid's shoulder. You saw what she did to Mark. A pounding at the front door cut off any further discussion. Through the high windows, we could see more shapes moving in the parking lot. The moaning was like nothing I'd ever heard before. Not quite human, but not quite animal either. Everyone grab a pack! I ordered, trying to keep my voice steady. Water, food, first aid. Real weapons if you can find them. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they figure out the windows are our weak point. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Most of us had camping gear stored here for the 3-day reenactment, and we quickly distributed the supplies. I found my own pack and smiled grimly at the ka-bar knife I always brought camping. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Joseph! Alan called from a corner. Found the emergency box. The large red container was a requirement for all reenactment events. Basic medical supplies, a weather radio, flares, and a few other essentials. I rushed over and yanked it open, pulling out the radio first. The static that greeted us wasn't encouraging, but after a few seconds of tuning, we caught a fragment of an emergency broadcast. Remain in your homes. Military response. Quarantine zones established. Bite victims. Terminate. The signal dissolved into static again, but we'd heard enough. The sound of breaking glass from one of the high windows made us all jump. Time's up, Bradley said, shouldering his pack. What's the play, Joseph? I looked around at my men. We had supplies now, but we were trapped in a building with limited exits, and the enemy's numbers were growing. Through the windows, I could see more infected stumbling out of the tree line. Many wore period costumes like us. Our fellow reenactors transformed into monsters. The tunnel, I said suddenly, remembering the maintenance access that ran under the building. There's a utility tunnel that connects to the visitor center. I'd helped the maintenance crew run cables through it last year. That's half a mile away, Peter protested. Better than here, I replied, moving to the trap door in the floor. It was hidden under a carpet, used mainly for storage. It'll be dark, but it's our best shot. As if to emphasize my point, another window shattered. A rotting hand reached through, clawing at the air. Derek, Sam, get this door open. Everyone else, form a perimeter. Use your knives if you have them. Don't waste energy with the rifles unless you're swinging them. The trap door creaked open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. The musty smell of damp earth wafted up. I've got a flashlight, Jimmy said, pulling one from his pack. Good man. You're on point. Bradley, you're rear guard with me. Everyone else, middle. Keep close, keep quiet. One by one, my men descended into the tunnel. The sounds of breaking glass and moaning grew louder above us. Bradley and I exchanged a look before following them down. I pulled the trap door closed just as the first infected broke through the window defenses. The beam of Jimmy's flashlight illuminated a concrete tunnel about 6 feet high, forcing us to crouch slightly. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness ahead, and the air was thick with humidity. "Forward," I whispered, "and pray the visitor center is still standing." 8 men moved forward into the darkness, our footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. Behind us, muffled by earth and wood, came the sound of the depot being overrun. We had survived the first wave, but as we made our way through the tunnel, I couldn't shake the feeling that our real test was still to come. The tunnel seemed endless. Jimmy's flashlight beam carved through the darkness, revealing patches of glistening moisture on the concrete walls. We'd been moving for about 15 minutes, but time felt distorted in the oppressive darkness. The only sounds were our footsteps, our breathing, and the occasional drip of water. "Hold up," Bradley whispered from behind me. "Listen." We froze. At first, I heard nothing but our own breathing. Then it came. A distant sound echoing through the tunnel behind us. Shuffling footsteps, accompanied by that inhuman moaning we'd heard above. "They followed us down," Sam said, his voice tight with fear. "Keep moving," I ordered, "but faster now, and quiet." We picked up our pace, trying to balance speed with stealth. The sounds behind us grew gradually louder. The infected weren't fast in the tunnel, but they were persistent. And unlike us, they didn't need Jimmy's flashlight to move forward. "Junction ahead," Jimmy called softly. The tunnel split into 3 paths. I moved up to the front, trying to remember the layout from last year. "Left," I said, pointing. "The right goes to the maintenance shed, and straight ahead dead ends at the water main." As we turned left, Peter stumbled. His rifle clattered against the concrete wall, the sound amplified in the confined space. The moaning behind us intensified. "Sorry," he whispered. "Sorry." "Keep moving," I urged, but I could hear the shuffling getting closer. The beam of Jimmy's flashlight was starting to flicker. "Batteries are dying," he reported, shaking the flashlight. That's when Alan screamed. In the dim light, I saw one of the infected had caught up to us. A woman in a period dress, her face half gone, hands reaching for Alan's legs. He kicked at her, but another appeared behind her. "Form up!" I shouted, abandoning stealth. "Bradley, Sam, Derek, rear guard! Everyone else, push forward! The exit should be close!" Jimmy's flashlight chose that moment to die completely. We were plunged into absolute darkness, broken only by the emergency light on my radio that cast a feeble red glow. The sounds of struggle filled the tunnel. Grunts, the meaty thud of rifle stocks hitting flesh, and that endless moaning. "Alan's down!" Bradley's voice called from the darkness. "They've got him!" "Keep moving!" I ordered, heart racing. "Forward! Forward!" Someone grabbed my arm. I nearly struck out before recognizing Chris's voice. "There's light ahead!" "I can see light." He was right. Maybe 30 yards ahead. A faint glow filtered down from what had to be the access hatch to the visitor center. We pushed forward, abandoning any pretense of quiet. Behind us, Alan's screams had stopped. "Sam, take point!" I commanded. "Get that hatch open! Jimmy, help him! Everyone else, defensive circle!" In the dim red glow of the radio light, I could make out shapes moving in the darkness behind us. Bradley and Derek were still fighting, their rifles rising and falling. I pulled out my K-bar knife, its weight reassuring in my hand. The infected woman in the period dress lurched toward me. I could smell the rot on her breath as I drove the knife up under her jaw. Behind her, more shapes moved in the darkness. "Hatch is stuck!" Sam called from ahead. "Both of you, push!" I shouted back, yanking my knife free. "Peter, Robert, get up there and help them." Bradley appeared beside me, his rifle stock slick with something I couldn't see in the darkness. "Derek's gone," he said, his voice hollow. "They swarmed him." A clang from above cut through the chaos. The hatch was opening. Pale daylight flooded down, momentarily blinding us. "Up! Everyone up now!" Sam went first, then Jimmy. Peter and Robert followed. I could hear them scrambling up the ladder. Bradley and I held our position, facing the advancing horde. In the new light from above, I could see dozens of infected filling the tunnel behind us. Some wore period costume like us, others modern clothes. All moved with that same terrible purpose. Go! I pushed Bradley toward the ladder. I'll hold them! Like hell you will, he growled, taking up position beside me. We go together. The infected were almost on us. I could see Alan and Derek among them now, their gray uniforms dark with blood. A hand grabbed at my jacket. I slashed with the knife, barely registering the face of what had once been a teenage boy in a Union uniform. Now! Bradley shouted. We turned and ran for the ladder. I pushed him ahead of me, then scrambled up behind him. Hands grabbed at my boots as I climbed. At the top, Bradley and Sam reached down and hauled me up the last few feet. Close it! I yelled. Sam and Peter slammed the hatch shut just as the first infected reached the top of the ladder. The sound of pounding came from below as we slid the bolts home. We lay there for a moment, gasping for breath. I looked around at my remaining men. 6 of us now, down from 8. Bradley, Sam, Jimmy, Peter, Robert, and me. But we weren't alone in the visitor center. The sound of gunfire outside told us that our emergence from the tunnel was just the beginning of our problems. On your feet, I said, pushing myself up. This isn't over yet. The visitor center's lobby was a war zone. Overturned furniture created makeshift barriers, and shattered glass from the gift shop littered the floor. Blood trails led in multiple directions. The gunfire we'd heard was coming from outside, punctuated by screams and that now familiar moaning. Check your 6, I whispered, falling back into military parlance. We moved in formation through the debris, our boots crunching on broken glass. The building's emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow, similar to the light from our radio in the tunnel. A gift shop Lincoln bobblehead stared at us accusingly from amid the wreckage. Multiple tangos. Front entrance, Bradley reported quietly, using the viewing window as cover. Through the glass doors, we could see infected swarming towards something in the parking lot. Gunshots rang out. Someone was making a stand out there. We need real weapons, I said, scanning the room. Security office should be down that hallway. They keep a shotgun for emergencies. This qualifies an emergency? Jimmy tried to joke, but his voice cracked. We moved as a unit down the hallway, past walls decorated with Civil War photographs. The security office door was ajar, and a dark smear ran down its surface. Sam moved to push it open, but I stopped him. Wait, I whispered. I pulled out my cowbar and tapped the blade against the doorframe. The response was immediate. Shuffling movement from inside, followed by a growl. 1 infected minimum, Bradley assessed. Tight quarters. Could be risky. Could be our only chance at a real weapon, I countered. Peter, Robert, watch our 6. Everyone else ready? They nodded. I took a deep breath, then kicked the door fully open. The infected security guard lunged out immediately, still wearing his uniform, minus most of his throat. Sam and Jimmy caught him with their rifles, pinning him against the wall. I moved in fast with the cowbar, ending his suffering quickly. Clear, Bradley called from inside the office. And jackpot. Shotgun's still here. Loaded, 5 rounds. Ammo? Box of shells on the desk. Maybe 20. A burst of automatic weapons fire from outside interrupted us. It sounded military, not civilian. Bradley handed me the shotgun while Sam distributed the shells. Listen up, I said, checking the weapon. Someone's fighting out there. Might be military, might be police. Either way, they're probably our best shot at survival. We need to... A scream cut me off. Through the office window, we saw someone sprint across the parking lot. A woman in modern clothes, running from a group of infected. She was heading straight for the visitor center. We have to help her, Jimmy said. It'll draw them right to us, Robert argued. We've got to think about... The woman reached the doors, yanking them open. Help! Please! Someone help! The infected were right behind her. Dozens of them, moving with that terrible speed we'd seen earlier. Some wore civilian clothes, others park ranger uniforms. One still had an audio tour headset around what remained of its neck. "Decision time," Bradley said quietly, looking at me. I chambered a round in the shotgun. "Peter, Robert, get ready to slam those main doors shut once she's in. Bradley, cover the right flank. Sam, Jimmy, left side. Standard crowd control formation, just like we practiced. Let's show these dead bastards how the South really fights." We moved fast, taking up positions behind the lobby's overturned furniture. The woman saw us and ran faster. "Here!" I shouted to her. "This way!" She dove through the doorway just as the first infected reached it. I fired the shotgun, the blast deafening in the enclosed space. The lead infected went down, taking two behind it as well. Peter and Robert slammed the doors shut, using a broken mop handle to bar them. "Thank you," the woman gasped, trying to catch her breath. "Thank you, I'm Rachel. I was giving a tour when—" "Save it," I said, not unkindly. "Those doors won't hold long. We need to move. Bradley?" "Rear exit's our best bet," he replied. "Through the education center, out the back." Emergency vehicles were staging in the lower lot earlier. Might still be there. The glass doors began to crack as more infected pressed against them. Through the spiderwebbed glass, I could see countless figures shambling out of the morning mist. The sound of gunfire had stopped outside. "New plan," I announced. "We're going to—" The ceiling ventilation duct above us crashed down with a thunderous bang. An infected park ranger dropped through, landing on Robert before anyone could react. His screams mixed with the sound of breaking glass as the front doors finally gave way. "Fall back!" I shouted, firing the shotgun again. "Everyone, fall back now!" The lobby erupted into chaos. Robert's screams stopped abruptly as Peter tried to pull him free. The infected were pouring in through the front doors. Rachel produced a small pistol from her purse and began firing with surprising accuracy. Jimmy and Sam held the left flank with their rifles, buying us precious seconds. "The office!" Bradley yelled. "Get to the security office!" We began a fighting retreat down the hallway, but as I turned to fire the shotgun again, I realized with horror that we'd walked right into their trap. Because from the other end of the hallway, past the security office, came the sound of breaking glass and more moaning. We were surrounded. Time slowed to a crawl as I processed our situation. Infected pouring in from both ends of the hallway. Robert dead. Peter trying to drag his body back. Rachel's pistol clicking empty. The shotgun heavy in my hands with only 3 shells left. Then Bradley started laughing. "What's so funny?" I snapped, firing the shotgun at the group coming from the lobby. The blast took down 2, but more shambled over their fallen bodies. "Just thinking," he said, swinging his rifle at an infected that got too close. "All those years playing soldier, and here we are in a real last stand." He glanced at the Civil War photographs still hanging on the walls. Right back at Gettysburg. That's when I saw it. The door we'd all overlooked. "Museum storage!" "Between the office and the bathroom," I shouted. The reinforced door was designed to protect valuable artifacts. "Sam, get it open!" Sam sprinted to the door while the rest of us formed a circle around him. Peter had given up on Robert's body and was using his rifle like a baseball bat. Jimmy's face was splattered with blood as he fought beside Rachel, who had resorted to using a broken gift shop flagpole as a spear. "It's locked!" Sam called out. "Move!" Rachel pushed past him, pulling a key card from her tour guide lanyard. The light turned green, and the door clicked open. "Inside!" "Now!" I ordered, firing my second-to-last shell. Jimmy and Peter went through first, followed by Rachel and Sam. Bradley and I held the line, walking backward toward the door as the infected pressed in from both sides. "Like Thermopylae," Bradley grunted, his rifle stock cracking against an infected skull. "Wrong war," I replied, firing my last shell point blank into what had once been a tourist in a Gettysburg t-shirt. "Get inside!" Bradley ducked through the door. I followed, slamming it shut just as the first infected reached it. The reinforced door shuddered under their assault, but held. "Everyone okay?" I asked, scanning our group in the dim emergency lighting. 5 faces looked back at me, bloodied but alive. We were in a long room filled with wooden crates and glass display cases. Civil War artifacts surrounded us. Rifles, uniforms, personal effects of soldiers who died here over 150 years ago. "What now?" Jimmy asked. "We can't stay here forever." "We don't have to," Rachel said. "This room connects to the loading dock. It's how we bring in new exhibits." She pointed to another heavy door at the far end of the room. "But it's at least 30 feet to the nearest vehicle, and there were dozens of them out there earlier." I checked my watch. Somehow only 11 hours had passed since the first infection at the reenactment. It felt like days. "We need a distraction," I said, looking around the room. My eyes fell on a crate marked Civil War Ordnance, Reproduction. "Sam, help me with this." Inside the crate were reproduction Civil War black powder charges. Not real ammunition, but packed with enough powder to make a loud bang for demonstrations. Beneath them was what I was really looking for. Reproduction signal flares, the kind used for battlefield communications. "Jimmy, grab that display musket and give me the powder from those charges. Peter, I need cloth. Tear up that reproduction flag. Bradley, Rachel, watch those doors." Working quickly, we created a dozen makeshift pipe bombs using the powder, flares, and anything that would serve as shrapnel. Not powerful enough to breach walls, but enough to create chaos. "Here's the plan," I said, gathering everyone close. "We throw these out the loading dock door in different directions. The noise and flash should draw them away. Then we run for..." I looked at Rachel. "The Park Service Humvee," she said. "It's still there. Keys in the ignition. Standard protocol for emergencies." "Perfect. Questions?" "Just one," Bradley said, hefting 2 of our makeshift bombs. "What would General Lee do?" I smiled grimly. "Probably not throw pipe bombs at zombies. Everyone ready?" They nodded. I pressed my ear to the loading dock door. The moaning outside was constant, but not directly nearby. Most of the infected were still trying to break through from the hallway. "On 3, I whispered. 1, 2, 3. Peter yanked the door open. Bradley and I threw the first bombs. They exploded with satisfying bangs, sending up showers of sparks. The infected turned toward the noise immediately. We threw more bombs, creating a circle of noise and light around us. "Now!" I shouted. "Run!" We sprinted for the Humvee, our boots pounding on the asphalt. The infected were confused, stumbling toward the multiple explosions. Rachel reached the vehicle first, yanking the door open. Sam and Jimmy piled into the back. Peter was next. An infected park ranger lurched out from behind a car. I swung the empty shotgun like a club, knocking it back. Bradley helped me into the Humvee, then jumped in himself. Rachel had the engine roaring before his door was closed. "Hold on!" she yelled, throwing it into gear. The Humvee crashed through a cluster of infected. Then we were on the access road, then the highway. In the side mirror, I watched Gettysburg disappear behind us, smoke rising from multiple fires across the battlefield. "We made it," Jimmy said quietly. "We actually made it." I looked at my watch again. Just past noon. 12 hours since the world ended. I thought about Alan and Derek in the tunnel, about Robert in the hallway, about all the others we'd lost. The radio crackled to life. Military broadcasts, evacuation orders, emergency instructions. "Where to?" Rachel asked from the driver's seat. "West," I said. "Into the mountains. Better defensible terrain." I caught Bradley's eye and smiled slightly. "After all, that's what Lee should have done." The Humvee roared west as the sun climbed higher in the sky. We had survived the first 12 hours. Now we just had to survive whatever came next. Behind us, Gettysburg hosted its final battle. This time, there would be no reenactment. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.